Hi everyone, how are you today? This is Mileta and this is about project management and more. Today we are going to talk about the first steps of a project manager on the project. What project manager needs to do and what's expected from him to accomplish. When project sponsor finds a good manager, hopefully a good project manager, good project manager will spend some time analyzing the project and creating a clear vision how the project will eventually develop. During that process, a project manager has to tailor project methodology to the needs of a project. So how the tailoring is going on, we will talk about that later. For a project manager, the first step is to create a clear vision of a project after performing in-depth analysis. In order to help him with the in-depth analysis, he or she should start with a charter. Charter with its chapters and the parts will guide the project manager during that process. Project manager will also have a business analyst on his side or her side to help to create and clarify a clear vision of a scope of the project. That's the role of a business analyst in that first period. But let's go back to the project manager. Project manager starts a charter. A charter will define the following thing: the scope of the project, together with the business analyst, what is in, and even more important, what is out. During that process, the project manager needs constantly to develop a schedule of the project. Schedule will help project manager to create that clear vision. So after the scope, project manager needs to define constraints and assumptions, because there is no plan that's done without assumptions, or a plan is completely void without a proper set of assumptions, and it works only under certain circumstances. So the first thing, scope; the second thing, constraints and assumptions. Then we need to define resources. We need to define who is going to work on that project. And this is where other stakeholders are coming into the game. So during that process, during creation of charter, the role and responsibility of a project manager is to get acquainted with all stakeholders, get acquainted and get to know all stakeholders of the project. He also needs to understand their needs and implement their needs in the charter. Those stakeholders will eventually approve that charter and eventually approve the project. So we better start talking to those people. After talking to stakeholders, you need to define exactly the goals of the project and define the success criteria of the project. What do you have to deliver in order to have project successful? As a result of that discussion with stakeholders, a project manager has to define deliverables, all deliverables of the project. Now we are coming to that methodology we mentioned at the beginning. And this is where project manager should have a clear vision of how he will deliver the project. That means how prescribed and well-documented methodologies, project management methodologies, will fit to the needs of the actual project. That process is called tailoring, and not too many people are talking about it. Are you going to use waterfall method? Are you going to use agile method? Are you going to use a combination of those two? And if you are going to use combination, which combination are you going to use? Are you going to start with waterfall and then end with agile? Are you going to start with agile? Is it possible to use agile in that particular case for that particular project? For all those years that I am a project manager, I haven't seen one project that's identical to the previous one. So for each project needs your full attention, your full analysis, understanding, and proper tailoring. Once you have a clear vision and you know exactly what are your deliverables, what are your resources, what is the scope of your project, what is not in your project, you can then finalize the budget of the project. It is project management. It is project manager's responsibility to control the budget of the project. Sometimes that's shared with some other line managers. Depends on the situation in your company. But usually a project manager is responsible to control how much money is available and how much money is spent during the project. And of course he needs to, or she needs to, work closely with the project sponsor and ensure that that budget is available all the time. We will talk later on how the budget is created, what are the elements of a budget, and what you need to pay attention during the project. We will later describe how you can have a good control of the budget at every moment of the project. You need to define the way how the people, resources on the project will communicate, how you as a project manager will communicate with your team, with your sponsors, with your steering committee, with your stakeholders, how frequently that will be, in what shape and form. There are multiple available templates and forms that you can use and copy from internet. You can use any status report template or form, but it is important that you on a regular basis inform your stakeholders and that you as a project manager is actually the voice of the project. Some project managers hide what's going on the project. They are scared that some people will see that there are problems, and that's not good. Your project must be transparent to all stakeholders. You need to work together with them. If you are not able to do that, then you need to learn some communication skills, and we will talk about that later. I'm strictly against hiding things on a project, keeping them away of your project sponsor, of your stakeholders. That's not the way how you can be successful. Your project charter should contain scope, what is in and what is not in. It should contain high-level schedule with constraints and assumptions. It will contain description of all the resources, human and technical, what are the roles, who is responsible for what. It will contain description of lines of communication with all stakeholders. It will contain description of the budget. At the end, it should contain a page where all stakeholders or major stakeholders will provide approval for the project to move on. Without those signatures, without those agreements among all stakeholders, you will not be able to start the project. So get those approvals and get those stakeholders on your side. You will need the help during the project. Our project will have good times and not so good times. We will talk about when there are problems on a project, how to resolve them. So that's a good reason to have everyone behind you during this journey. So the first task for a project manager on a project is to create a project charter together with the business analyst and to create a clear vision how the project will be delivered through tailored methodology.